So next round, last for today. It is important, this difference. Capital is not money. Capital does not equal wealth. Money does not equal wealth. It can be translated into, transformed into, but this is a different story. Now, in order to be able to understand what actually happens as part of this process of production, we have to look as well at the economic dimension of the different meanings of capital. As I said, they are different from accounting, they are different from finance, where you all have a different understanding of capital, but we have it in economics as well. And it is of crucial importance to understand the different parts of capital, because not everything is productive. And even this is a different understanding. What may be considered as productive, as profitable in terms of finance or accounting, is not really concerned with the process of production. There we are talking about being profitable. I make gains out of it, but this is nothing about the production of the value, of the added value, the surplus value. So we have these 5 different forms: constant capital, fixed capital, circulating capital, variable capital, and fictitious capital. Mind, it's fictitious capital. It has nothing to do with what we talked about fictitious commodities. It's fictitious capital. So what is this about? We have a block here, fixed capital and circulating capital looking together. The fixed capital is invested into the process of production. The physical assets, and now something is a little bit difficult, not consumed in the process of production. Which is different to the circulating capital. This is what actually is consumed, the raw materials. During one circle of production, the raw material is used. It's gone, meaning it's transformed into a new quality. The raw timber I have, after the production, after the process of production, it is a table, it is a chair, it is some other good, some other commodity. Now, saying fixed capital is not consumed in the process of production is by and large correct, but it needs some qualification. The use of a machine means that over a long period of time, parts of the value is transferred to the product. I assume you have had this in accounting, writing off. After a certain period of time, a machine, a computer still works, but in the books it appears as 0. Physically, it's still there, but the value had been transferred into the product. There's a simple reason for it. After a certain time, this machine, this computer, is not anymore up to the standard. It is not really productive as the usual stuff. Wear and tear. After a certain time, you have to invest more into the repairing this thing than buying a new one. After a certain time or period of time, a computer simply doesn't work anymore in the way it should work. It cannot cope with the software that is used then. It cannot cope with the internet speed that is used then. So in this way, it's this writing off. There is a little bit always transferred into the new products, but it is not used during this one circle of production. We don't have to bother here how it is calculated and what periods are there defined as writing off period. It's different from machine to machine. It's different from country to country. Important for us is the fact that something is transferred during this process of production, but not during this one circle of production. That's variable capital. Well, intermediate products, I should briefly mention them because it's something I produce, but I use immediately to move on in production. This will be, keep it in mind, important later for GDP, gross domestic product. So variable capital is something that is completely different. Completely different because it is not invested in the same way. It has a different status. This is the part that actually creates value. This is the labor force I apply. And this is the actual production. The other parts go into it. They are transferred, transformed. Probably could say something like in terms of chemistry, in terms of the physical part, it stays the same. Timber is timber, if it's raw timber or if it is a table, in simple terms. But labor, applied labor, transforms something to something completely new. And this new is, of course, in terms of use value, the new product. And we need this to be able to bring it to the market, otherwise nobody buys it. But it is as well something new in terms of exchange value. This little of the more, the apostrophe in the other graphic, this is what labor actually creates. The additional value, the new value. And then the fixtures capital, marketable claims to share in future surplus value of production. This is more for the finance people. We may go into this in the second semester, but not now. It is not really capital. In this in the understanding of the previous ones of investment, but it's actually highly risky. It's all these new financial instruments you find today. I buy into an insurance because I speculate that I get at some stage something out of it. And this something out of it means I get more out of it than I invest. Variable capital means labor power. This is the decisive, the central point for the capitalist process. This is the real production, the creation, the generation of value, the transformation of one material into another, the activation of a machine or as well a tool. That's the decisive part where actually we find the creation, the generation of value. It's labor power, and it is labor. We will come to the distinction labor power at a later stage. It is the question, again, it will be the question of the difference between use value and exchange value. This is something that follows us throughout, in economics, throughout our entire life. So here you have everything put together. Adam Smith and the likes, it would be as well later economists of Milton Friedman, Hayek, orienting on the market and focusing on fixed capital and circulating capital, and saying actually the value creation is of course part of this process of production, of bringing them together, but the actual value creation, the generation of value, is happening on the market, selling the goods, selling the products. In all cases, you have this fixed capital as the physical assets, where some part of the value is transferred into the new product. You have this transfer as well when it comes to circulating capital. On the one hand, you have raw material and you have labor as two parts of the circulating capital. So you can see here as well the difference. Before I said we put fixed capital and circulating capital together, but now I said circulating capital is not fixed capital, but it is, and not part of this group, but it is itself in its own standing important, and we can divide this into raw material, things that are immediately during this one process, one circle of production, transferred into the new product. And we have labor that actually acts, that creates actively the new value. Still, we have this combination, grouping it together again, fixed capital and part of the circulating capital into constant capital. This is what I invest in, or as a matter of physical assets. And now you find the huge difference between the schools, economic schools, where on the one hand the marketeers, market orientation say what happens, the value is actually important and realized or generated on the market. It's a matter of exchange, of being good salesperson to make the money. This is the primary point of creating value. It's not the production. When we talk about the creation of value, generating value, it is something that happens on the market. Supply, demand, calculating how I do it best, and then trying to get the highest price. In competition with other suppliers of the same good. There you find the decisive difference. The first goes on, we will talk about it, into marginal theories of economics, the marginal value of goods, and this is the decisive of making money. And then you find, for instance, the most known for this, David Ricardo and Karl Marx, as saying the value creation is something that is based on the law of value, and the law of value is determined how the constant capital and the variable capital are working together. The actual value creation is only happening by V, by variable capital. This is the active process, but it depends very much on being combined with the constant capital. But here, in the process, as part of the process of production, value is literally created. This has to be clear as the first step because if I organize production, I will of course have to look how I combine the different factors. Even if the variable capital, laborers, workers, create the value, generate the value, there is no point in having 1,000 people there without them having at least something they can work on. There is no point in getting air and that's it. You need raw material, you need tools, you need machines, you need different raw materials. So it is about the combination of the different factors in terms of quantity and in terms of quality. This is how I organize this process. Here in the formula, fixed constant capital, circulating constant capital, they are combined, in a way the hardware if you want, with the variable capital, with the active labor force. And this makes up the process of production. In physical terms, we need some instruments, we need raw material as people to work on. And in terms of value, because of course in capitalist economy, we say everything has a value, And we can measure this value, or we can express this value in terms of money. This is the decisive point, the core of the entire economic dimension of capitalist production. But you have to understand, and this is equally important and usually forgotten, latest when it comes to the crisis we mentioned this, that all this depends on all these factors I mentioned before. Urbanization, defamiliarization, socialization, securitization. All this plays a role. Wage labor, qualification of wage labor. All this goes into this process, and without having this permanently in mind, we cannot understand it. Without being able to understand it, we cannot organize it. And without understanding the complexity, we cannot organize it properly. We can do something. As I said in one of the lectures, I think, my neighbor being painter, talking with him about the wallpapering of my rooms. He said, you can do it, fine. Why do you ask me? I know why you are doing it, because I can do it better. I do it in one day or half a day, and you need a week or even longer. I have the qualification, I have the instruments. Sometimes very simple things. Sometimes as well important for us in terms of what kind of writing instrument, what kind of computer, what kind of paper do we buy. Simple things like this. And you will be surprised how simple this is. I had to fix once my own, being not having so much money, I had to fix shelves on the wall, screws. Not being willing to pay much for a screwdriver, I said, okay, this is for £1 or whatever. It works. After I don't know how many screws, it had been broken, it didn't work. It was actually really tough to work with it. So I bought a new one, another one for it. Fine, will do the job. And then I bought a good one. I don't know, I paid probably £10 for it or something. I thought, well, this nearly works on its own. It's so easygoing, it doesn't break, it really does a job. So it is what kind of tools. A screwdriver is not a screwdriver, even so simple things. And of course, a robot is not a robot. And then it depends, can you do something with a robot, or do you need still somebody who works, who is able, who has the qualification and all this. I mentioned already depreciation, writing off, and I did not mention yet velocity and appreciation. The profit, absolute and relative, depends on the way in which I combine the different capitals. Good tools, good machines, good, highly qualified workforce, and good raw material. This matters. All matters in a different way. And I have to be able to combine it in a very specific way, namely the way that I maximize the outcome. We talked about the production function. This is exactly what comes to play here. The combination of the different factors of production with the aim of having the best output. And I say the best output can mean the best output in terms of quantity, It can mean to have the best output in terms of quality. And of course, I consider then, even if I look at the law of value, what can I sell, what can I realize later on the market in the best way? Where do I get the most profit out of it? High quality, high-end products? Or just something that I can sell, that it's broken, my little screwdriver, I used it for 1 hour and it was gone. If I use it for 1 screw per year, it's fine, it works. I don't want to invest a huge amount of money into this. If I use it permanently, not necessarily for business, but because I have a leisure time activity where I need this, then it's a different story. Cars, clothes, furniture, there are different markets as well, something you have to understand. And with the production, I adapt to the different markets, to the expectations I have. It is actually interesting here in China now, where you have apparently 2 movements when it comes to the market. These are always aggregative figures. It doesn't matter what you do, what people you know do. It is just a statistical average or something. We have the one move towards Chinese products. Apparently more and more Chinese products are bought, domestic products, produced here, for being consumed here. And you have a move, according to the general information, to the aggregate figures, a move to higher quality. Of course, if you look then at the statistics in detail, you will find differences between social groups, between regions. This is, of course, something as well. How do you define your domestic market? Is it a local market or is it the Chinese market? Where do you want to sell? A little bit more in detail what this is about. Velocity, liquidity, here we are talking about speed. I can invest something, a certain amount of money, and I get huge profit out of it. At some stage. $1,000 investment. This is what we all do if we bring money to the bank. If you think, great, I will be rich. I get interest, I get money actually just to bring it, for bringing it to the bank. After a long, long time, you gained. Probably to get there, if you bring your money to the bank in your current account or in your little saving account, it's something for your grandchildren. They can say, oh, Grandpa was really great. He invested the money. I have now additional money. He didn't give me 1,000, but he actually gave me 10,000. Now, this depends on the interest rate until then, but this is a very slow process. So I have actually quite a lot gained after a long time. The alternative let's be a little bit generous. I invest again 1,000 and I have 1,010, meaning plus 10. The 10 is additional, it's profit. But I get this actually tomorrow. The 10 I get tomorrow. We always simplify things and work with models. If I calculate every day 10 yuan more, over, what did I say, 30 years or something, you can calculate how much you will have at the end. If you take the right figures, the correct figures, the short-term small profit will be much more than the long-term investment, where you get something out of it, but at the end of the day, not as much. And this is, of course, something then that depends as well on how much can you actually invest. How much do you have here to start with? As faster as I get the additional money, as better it is. Because what you can say, this is a commonly used term, this is dead capital. I bring it to the bank and it's gone. And I don't know how many years, in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, I get it back. I get more back, fine. But during this period of time, I don't have anything, at least not from this. Here I have it back tomorrow and have more and can actually go on here instead of investing the 1,000, I invest here the 1,010. And how much do I have then? So it's, at the end of the day, it's exponential growth. I think that's it. At the end of the day, it's exponential growth because I get, again, a little bit more every time. The one rice corn on the chessboard. At some stage, I have quite a lot, meaning so much that the chessboard is too small. This is this kind of investment. Velocity matters. Liquidity is linked to it, and I have to think about it when I invest. It was the contradiction I was talking about before, that I create, as employer, liquidity, meaning I pay wages, and this is the money the worker has available to spend. Liquidity. And the worker or the consumer is liquid in terms of consumption. She can immediately spend the money. I can change the liquidity to some extent or in some way when actually I say I take up a loan. I'm not really liquid. I don't have the money now, but I can go to the bank and they will give me the loan because I have some security. I can guarantee, whatever this means, that I pay back. Of course, I have to pay then something to the bank because they want to be happy and have money as well. And this is about the interest. Interest rates, interest. I give up liquidity or I gain liquidity, depending on what I do. I get money out of the bank and I have to pay interest to the bank. Or I actually say, I have more money than I need. I have an income of 1,000 per day. I need 100. So I can bring every day actually 900 to the bank. But of course I want to see money first. Otherwise I keep it at home. If you have much money, don't keep it at home, because even if you don't get money back from the bank, it is at least secure in the safe there. So this is very important. It determines as well the way of investment. I want return, but not only absolute return, but as well relative return. So I have to balance these two. And I have to balance these two as well as consumer. That's what we always do when we buy something now, or we delay the purchase, because then we can get something better, or we delay the purchase in terms of we don't have the money now, we don't get the loan from the bank, but we can save the money over time, and then we can buy whatever we want. Something more in the difficult on the difficult part. Indirectly or directly, even we talked about it, but not using these terms. We have the technical composition and the organic composition of capital. We have the different simplified factors of production. We have the C plus V, fixed circulating capital C and V as variable capital. They are combined. This is a matter of value, as I said, and it is this matter of use value and of exchange value. The one is simply the technical thing of what can I do? How many people do I need to move this thing from A to B? Or I don't use people, I use some machine, some tool to make it easier. This is the technical part. I combine, I decide what is better, what is the easiest, most convenient way. And I may even, because I'm looking at the technical composition, I may even say, okay, this is a little bit more expensive, but it is more convenient. So I go for that way. The organic composition is a matter of value in terms of exchange values. And the difference between the technical composition and the value composition is manifested in that the value relation of the two portions of capital may vary while the technical composition is constant. There are only so many workers that are able to use this pen at one stage. And this is one person. There is no point that there are two people trying to write something and possibly trying to write something different. This is given by the technicalities. There is a certain amount of raw material needed to put into a product. Many chefs spoil the soup or something. If there are too many people working on preparing a meal, it is not making the meal better, but most likely worse. No, you should do this. The meal is spoiled or the time is wasted because they are permanently fighting. So this is given in technical terms. In value terms, it is a different thing. I look at from a different perspective at what is actually going on and how do I combine it. What do I calculate? This is, for instance, the different combination of constant capital, variable capital, and CF and CC, capital, fixed capital and circulating capital. This is where I have leeway of having bad equipment, but excellent people working on it, having good raw material. Some people say there are some raw materials you can't make anything wrong. This is a typical expression of it. Actually, whatever you do, you are not able to spoil this. This stuff tastes so good that even if you put too much salt or if it's too spicy, it still is good. Of course, it's not in absolute terms true, but in relative terms. Here I have actually the quote in terms of the twofold, free in the twofold sense. For the conversion of his money into capital, therefore the owner of money must meet in the market with a free laborer. Now it comes to the transformation to capital. Free in the double sense that a free man, he can dispose of his labor power as his own commodity, commodification of labor. It's now a commodity. It's now relevant in terms of exchange value. And that on the other hand, he has no other commodity for sale, is short of everything necessary for the realization of his labor power. There's nothing else I can do. I don't have machines, I don't have tools, and I cannot produce anything else without this and bring it to the labor market. That's it. I'm free. Free in these two senses, and this allows that I can work, that I can take up work on the labor market, but it as well, it forces us. So always the question of freedom has to be seen in this context. And it has to be seen as well, to some extent, as a limitation of the freedom of the employer. At the end of the day, he or she depends on the worker, on the qualification, on the available qualification. This is necessary to understand as the core of this concept, the mutual dependency, which allows certain negotiations.